My name is Ghian Foreman, and I am the president of the Chicago Police Board, and I am calling the board's December 17th public meeting to order. To protect the public's health in response to the COVID-19 outbreak and as permitted by Governor Pritzker's executive orders 2020-07 and 2020-74, this meeting is taking place remotely. This meeting is open to the public via audio conference and is being carried live by CAN TV. Those participating by phone are on mute in order to reduce background noise and disruptions. We have a court reporter making a transcript of this meeting. I will begin by taking attendance so it is clear who is participating in this meeting. Please say here after I read your name. Police Board Vice President Paula Wolff.
Here.
Police Board Member Matthew Crowd.
Here.
Police Board Member Michael Eady.
Here.
Police Board Member Steve Flores.
Here.
Police Board Member Jorge Montes. Jorge?
Here.
We'll come back to Jorge. I think he's here. Board Member John O'Malley.
Here.
Board Member Rhoda Sweeney.
Here.
Board Member Andrea Zopp.
Here.
Superintendent of Police David Brown.
Yeah, he was on for a second. I think he's having some tech issues.
Okay, we'll come back.
So
We'll
he's
come
trying to
back.
get on.
Chief Administrator of Building Officer of Police Accountability, Susan Roberts.
Here.
Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety, Deborah Witzburg.
Here.
Chief of Chicago Police Department, Deborah.
Here.
General Counsel to the Superintendent, O'Connor.
Here.
Chief of the Chicago Police Department, Operations, Ghian. Chief of Chicago's Police Department, Bureau of Detectives, Brendan Bingham.
Here, there's a lot of background.
Hey,
here.
Ghian, we're getting a lot of feedback from somebody who's not on mute.
Can everyone mute their phones? Max, I don't know if you have the ability to mute everyone.
That's better now, Ghian.
All right, wonderful. Executive Director.
Brendan's here, sorry.
All right, thank you. Executive Director of the Police Board, Max Caproni.
Here.
I'm just gonna check. Board Member Jorge Montes will be joining us shortly, and Superintendent Brown. So hopefully the technical issues get resolved and we get both of them. We'll now proceed to the items on the meeting agenda. We'll have time at the end of the meeting for public comments. Once again, those participating by phone are currently on mute in order to reduce background noise and disruptions. When we get to the public comment portion of the meeting, we will unmute each speaker. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the board's November 19th regular public comment?
This is Paula Wolff. I so move.
Michael Eady, second.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. The schedule of the police board's monthly public meetings have been set and will be available on the board's website, chicagopoliceboard.org. Our next regular public meeting will be held on Thursday, January 21st at 7:30 p.m. Whether this will be an in-person meeting or a remote meeting will be determined closer to the meeting date. Is there a motion to close a series of executive sessions for the purposes of considering personnel matters and litigation as authorized by sections 2C, 1, 3, 4, and 11 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act?
This is Paula Wolff. I so move.
Michael Eady, second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. A report of disciplinary actions taken by the board during the previous month has been made available on the board's website. The police board plans to consider at a future public meeting proposed amendments to its rules of procedure for disciplinary cases and to the rule governing suspensions of officers precluded from lawfully carrying a firearm. Drafts of these proposed amendments will be posted for public comments in the alerts section of the board's websites. Earlier this evening, the board, as required by the Illinois Open Meetings Act, met and considered minutes and recordings of all past closed meetings to determine whether the need for confidentiality still exists. The board members unanimously agreed that it continues to be necessary to keep confidential the minutes and recordings of its past meetings. The general orders and other directives issued by the superintendent during the previous months are also posted on the police department's website. I'll now turn it over to Superintendent, I think First Deputy Carter, are you on?
I'm on, Ghian. This is
Oh,
Sue.
okay, Superintendent, thank you. I heard you had a little technical challenges, so glad you made it today.
I have 14-year-old daughter challenges with messing with my laptop. Anybody get witness to that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Good evening. I want to begin by remembering 2 police officers who lost their lives in service to our city 2 years ago on this very night. Officers Eduardo Mamaleo and Conrad Gary were struck and killed by a passing train and a gun. It's important to remember their sacrifice, and I want to also the families of these officers to know that their loved one will forever be remembered by the department that we'll never forget. I also want to recognize for the president and the board, the detectives that investigated the fatal carjacking of retired firefighter Dwayne Williams on the South Side that we all made aware of. Lieutenant Williams was shot and killed while returning to his vehicle after buying his favorite popcorn in Morgan Park. A 15-year-old male was arrested yesterday afternoon and charged with first-degree murder and attempted robbery with a firearm. Detectives are also interviewing an adult that is believed to be involved in this case as well, and we are on the lookout for 2 others in this same case. I joined Mayor Lightfoot today to express our deep concern about search warrants that was conducted in February of 2019, almost 2 years ago. Ms. Young can be seen both vulnerable and afraid in body-worn camera footage of officers raiding her home. CBD's home raid policies were revised in January of 2020 of this year. And this week I ordered my senior staff to perform another thorough review and recommend even more safeguards as it relates to search warrants. Among them, bureau chiefs among the highest ranking members of the department would be required to sign off on all unannounced search warrants. These types of search warrants would only be used when it believes that calling attention to the presence of law enforcement would endanger the officers or others. Finally, only our SWAT team officers will be allowed to execute unannounced search warrants going forward. We also are reviewing all search warrants, not just the unannounced search warrants, to see if there's any other mistakes that we can find and bring those mistakes forward if we find them for transparency to the public and to hold those accountable who made those mistakes. I believe these changes could improve outcomes and are another step in the continuous efforts to improve and reform the department, which we are committed to. As I said earlier today in a press conference with the mayor, I have 3 guiding tenets in my role as superintendent and really for my personal life. Number 1, everyone deserves a measure of respect, everyone. And it's always the right time to do the right thing. And lastly, but certainly not least, be the first to admit your mistakes, the first. With these guiding principles, I'm convinced that the Chicago Police Department will emerge as a stronger and more transparent organization. And although these violations occurred almost 2 years before my tenure began as your superintendent, I take full responsibility in ensuring that the integrity of this department is restored and that trust is built going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. For the record, I want to indicate that Board Member Jorge Montes has also joined us as well. Thank you, Chief. Superintendent. Next, Chief Roberts, would you please provide your report?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My report today is going to be brief, just a few updates since we last met. In the last month, COPA responded to and opened for investigation for officer-involved shootings. COPA met with residents of the 49th Ward following the shooting incident that occurred in Rogers Park, and is scheduled to meet with residents of the 33rd Ward relative to the shooting incident in Albany Park that occurred this past Saturday. These outreach efforts, COPA focuses on informing the community of the basic facts involved in the incident, but we also take the time to explain COPA's role in the investigation of these matters, what our investigative protocol is, what the video release expectations will be, and also affords the residents an opportunity to ask us questions. I also wanted to make note that COPA closed the 2018 fatal officer-involved shooting of Mr. Maurice Granton Jr. that occurred in the Bronzeville neighborhood. This case is currently pending review by the Chicago Police Department. Finally, as the superintendent mentioned, the investigation into the search warrant of Ms. Young's home, which was reported to COPA in November of 2019, is a open and pending investigation with COPA. We are coming close to conclusion and expect to complete our investigation by early 2021. Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. One of the things at the police board that we have tried to do is start to use some of the meetings as a way not only for the police board to be educated about certain issues, but to make sure that the public could also get information regarding issues that deal with public safety. Today, we've asked Deputy Inspector General for Public Safety, Deborah Witzburg, to take a few minutes to summarize the report that her office issued today. Deputy Inspector General.
Thanks, Ghian. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the report we issued today. This report deals with the use of the affidavit override process in disciplinary investigations conducted by CPD's Bureau of Internal Affairs and by COPA. The report is published on our website. It's available there. I want to say first that we very much appreciate CPD and COPA's cooperation with this report, as well as their responses. The written responses of CPD and COPA are included in the published report in full. And most importantly, we appreciate the commitments that CPD and COPA have made to reform and improvement in response to our recommendations. So what I'd like to do this evening with a few minutes of everyone's time is to sort of talk about the report and its contents at a high level, and then to talk about a couple of things that I think are worthwhile by way of context and perhaps of particular interest to this body. So with apologies in advance for covering a little bit of ground which may be known to many of you, I'll start very briefly by talking about the affidavit requirement itself and the nature of the override process. As a matter of state law, as well as the collective bargaining agreements between the City of Chicago and the represented members of the Chicago Police Department, allegations of police misconduct must, except in limited exceptional circumstances, be supported by a sworn affidavit. That is to say that a person making a complaint against a police officer, in most circumstances, unless they are themselves a department member, must sign an affidavit in support of their allegations. A process exists, however, as a matter of law and as recognized by the CBAs, by those union agreements and the department policies, which is called the affidavit override process. The affidavit override is a process by which, in the absence of that sworn affidavit, the investigating agency, in this case, in our study, either BIA or COPA, may proceed with a disciplinary investigation, even in the absence of a sworn affidavit. This has been a matter of much public policy debate and concern, going as far back in relatively recent history to the Police Accountability Task Force and the Department of Justice Pattern and Practice Investigation of the Chicago Police Department. There were highlighted there concerns about the fact that in many situations, the affidavit requirement, the fact the fact that most allegations must be supported by an affidavit, had been used as something of a shield against accountability, an obstacle to the completion of misconduct investigations. And the sort of big picture conclusion of our report is that, in fact, the affidavit override process, when used appropriately and when it is available, is an opportunity to tremendously lower the barriers to accountability, which may be raised in some circumstances by the affidavit requirement. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the findings in our report and sort of what those give rise to. We looked over a period of time at the disciplinary investigations which have been closed, which have come to completion, handled by both BIA and COPA, and found that in that population of cases, more cases were closed without a complete investigation for lacking an affidavit than for any other reason, than in any other sort of closure category. We found that there were situations in which CPD, as well as both COPA and its predecessor agency, IPRA, did not pursue an affidavit override. So did not pursue a mechanism which would have allowed those agencies to complete disciplinary investigations, even in the absence of those affidavits. And those fell into a number of different categories, including situations in which agencies did not pursue an override, even though there was evidence that might have supported the request for an override, including, for example, body-worn camera footage, in-car camera footage, witness accounts, and so on. Those cases also included situations where the agencies closed investigations for lacking an affidavit, even though an investigation might have fallen into one of those exceptional categories where no affidavit is required. We also found that BIA and COPA frequently closed for lacking an affidavit investigations which were associated with civil suits. So these were situations in which the city had been sued because of alleged misconduct by a member of the Chicago Police Department. And in those situations, the agencies were even more likely to close corresponding investigations for lacking an affidavit, even in spite of the risk that poses of a situation in which the city pays out either a settlement or a judgment arising out of a course of conduct by a member of the Chicago Police Department, which has never been meaningfully investigated for disciplinary purposes. Finally, we found that investigations that go forward on the basis of an affidavit override are more likely to result in sustained findings of misconduct than those investigations which proceed otherwise. And I think that's, an important comfort to any concern that the use of the override process might give rise to sort of frivolous complaints. So I think what those findings leave us with is a picture in which there is sort of an unnecessary obstacle to the pursuit of accountability in the form of this affidavit requirement. And so there are sort of two things within the body of the report, and then two sort of contextual things which I want to talk about, and then I will wrap up so that we can get to the rest of the meeting. A number of the recommendations in the report have to do with improvements to policies and procedures of the investigating agencies, including around the sort of quality of the investigative record, so that it is discernible from the record whether there was evidence in place which would have supported an affidavit override, and whether the agencies considered those possibilities. And I think of particular interest to many involved parties, certainly victims or complainants, accused members, and perhaps most particularly members of this body as adjudicators, there are some important implications for when it comes to quality of the investigative record. In the agency's responses to our report, which I will say again, as a general matter, we very much appreciate for their content. There was sort of the notion raised that there are pieces of information collected by the investigating agencies, which do not become part of the investigative file, but rather are kept on paper outside of the electronic investigative record. That is a concern from my perspective, both as a general matter of accountability and when it comes to the quality of the record, which might come before this body. I think that at least sort of raises the specter of disciplinary street files. The second matter within the report that I want to talk a little bit about is the time period that this report covered. The period of analysis here ends at the end of 2018. And we very much appreciate the agency's position that there have been improvements since that time in terms of the underlying practices and the frequency of use of the override process. I want to note, however, that there's an awful lot of room for improvement here. There were about 100 override requests over a period of 14 years. And so improvements in that number, while important, have a long way to go. I think it's also important to note that time period extends to a couple of years past the issuance of the task force report and the Department of Justice report that raised concerns about this process. Furthermore, I know of interest and concern to this body is sort of the length of the lifespan of disciplinary cases and how long these cases take to sort of reach their conclusion. And I want to note in that vein that among the matters before the Chicago City Council yesterday was a proposed settlement, ultimately an approved settlement, arising out of a lawsuit filed against the city and members of the Chicago Police Department. There was an approved settlement of $295,000 arising out of a course of conduct for which COPA had a corresponding disciplinary investigation opened in 2018, which it closed for lacking an affidavit. And so yesterday, the city approved a payment of $295,000 for a course of conduct which has never been investigated for disciplinary purposes. There has never been a determination of whether there was in fact administrative misconduct by those officers and whether some measure of discipline is appropriate. The two things that I want to touch on very quickly, sort of outside the four corners of the report, two things. One is that in this seemingly perpetual season of contract negotiations with the police unions, the existence of the affidavit requirement has been a drum much beaten in the public conversation. And there are many advocates in the space who have identified the elimination of that requirement as their sort of highest priority and one for which the city should, in terms of the negotiation, sort of pay an enormous cost. And I think it's really important to be clear that what our report makes clear is that the costs of the affidavit requirement can be lowered tremendously. The cost to accountability, that is, can be lowered tremendously by the effective use of the override process. That is to say that the extent to which advocates see the affidavit requirement as an obstacle to reform can be all but overcome by the effective use of a process that is already in place. The other thing the last thing that I'll say in terms of particular interest to this body is that in thinking about the entire universe of police misconduct complaints and the volume of those complaints in comparison to the relatively small volume of cases that come before this body, it's important to think about the fact that one of the sort of choke points in that process, one of the points at which meaningful allegations of police misconduct drop off before they may be investigated or adjudicated, is closures for lacking an affidavit. And to the extent that those closures for lacking an affidavit could be minimized by the appropriate use of the override requirement, that would lead to a sort of more comprehensive and robust disciplinary process and adjudication process at the end of the lifespan, which comes before this body. So that's sort of the big picture. And I think, you know, it is very much our view that the affidavit override process is one which serves the ends both of the pursuit of accountability and the protection of the procedural rights of the members of the Chicago Police Department. And so for that reason, we appreciate, again, CPD and COPA's commitments to improving their policies and procedures around the use of the process. And we look forward to reporting on those improvements in a future report.
Thank you. Board Member Wolff.
I have two general questions that you may not have the answer on the tip of your tongue, although I'd be surprised if you didn't. The first is the use of the affidavit a common practice in jurisdictions like ours? And the second is, in the places where they do have the affidavit requirement, is the override used more frequently than it's used in Chicago on average?
So the use of the affidavit is, among other things, a creature of state law. So everywhere in the state of Illinois is subject to the affidavit requirement itself.
I'm sorry, I asked the question wrong. Other jurisdictions in the country.
Oh, there are a variety of approaches. I don't have sort of a comprehensive comparison, in fact, on the tip of my tongue. It is not a unique creature.
Any other questions from the board?
And in the places where it does exist, do they use the override process more frequently than we do, proportionate to the number of cases?
We did not do a comparative analysis of the use of similar processes.
Okay. I know Superintendent Brown and Chief Roberts, you all have some written responses, but would you like the opportunity to respond now?
Sure. I'll go first, Sydney, if you don't mind. So, Mr. President, I would like my General Counsel, Dana O'Malley, to chime in here. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. So first, I just want to thank Deborah and her team. You know, it was easy to work with you and to work together on this audit. It's obviously a very important issue, and we look forward to continuing to work with you on the recommendations. You know, our attachment A to the report is our response to the audit. And I think if you look at it, you'll see that we generally accept almost all of the recommendations, if not all of the recommendations, and we are working on implementing those currently. I think it's important to note that in February of 2019, COPA and CPD started using a new system, the case management system, which affords us an opportunity to accept the recommendations that the IG has made in a way that we've actually already implemented those. It gives us more of an opportunity to manage the cases, to include more information in the case management system than what we were able to do in CLEAR. In the prior system, we really had some technology limitations that we don't have now. So I think that will give us an opportunity to make these changes and accept these recommendations a little bit faster than we would have under our prior technology. So we look forward to continuing to work with PSIG on this, and thank you very much for the opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Dana. Chief Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as Dana mentioned, we really appreciate the work of the Office of the Inspector General. And as Deborah mentioned, the scope of this audit was from January of 2017 to December of 2018. And the practices during that time period are just not consistent with COPA's current practices. Right now, as Dana mentioned, significant improvements, process changes, technology changes were implemented in 2019. We're continuing implementation in 2020. I mean, COPA, is a new agency. We were not a continuation of IPRA, and as a new agency, we had to develop processes that aligned not only with best investigative practices, but also aligned with compliance with the consent decree. And so as an agency, we have just matured significantly since the time period in which this audit was conducted. And, we did look at the report and, I was pleased to say that in almost every instance, we were able to acknowledge that we have already made those improvements to the process in the last 2 years since that report closed. So we'll continue to work with the Inspector General and continue to work with CPD. And I think the significant case closure of cases that have proceeded to full investigation is an indication that we are taking the right cases to full investigation. The civil suit that's going on right now involving Ms. Young is a case that remains open. And so it's just, you know, our practice today is just distinctly different than what it was during that time. So appreciate to know that we are headed in the right direction, and look forward to continuing to work with the Inspector General as well as CPD in this regard. Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chief. The Police Board, as authorized by the Open Meetings Act, has considered in a closed meeting several disciplinary cases. The board will now take final action on those cases. Regarding case number 19 PB 2968, is there a motion to find police officer Bobby Weatherly guilty of filing court documents with false information and to discharge him from the Chicago Police Department?
This is Paula Wolff, so moved.
Michael Eady, second.
I will now call on members of the board for their votes. Wolff?
Aye.
Crow?
Aye.
Eady?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Montes?
Aye.
O'Malley?
Aye.
Sweeney? You're on mute, Rhoda.
Aye.
Zop?
Aye.
And I also vote in favor of the motion. Voting in favor are board members Wolff, Crow, Eady, Flores, Montes, O'Malley, Sweeney, Zop, and myself. The motion passes by a vote of 9-0. Is there a motion to adopt the written findings and decision that have been reviewed by all board members who participated in this case?
This is Paula Wolff, so moved.
Michael Eady, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes. Regarding case number 19 PB 2953, is there a motion to find police officer Jason Berg guilty of making false reports and improperly allowing an off-duty officer to leave the scene of a crime and to discharge him from the Chicago Police Department?
This is Paula Wolff, so moved.
Michael Eady, second.
I will now call upon the board members for their votes. Wolff?
Aye.
Crow?
Aye.
Eady?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Montes?
Aye.
O'Malley?
Opposed.
Sweeney?
Aye.
Zop?
Aye.
And I vote in favor of the motion. Voting in favor are board members Wolff, Crow, Eady, Flores, Montes, Sweeney, Zop, and myself. Board member O'Malley dissents. The motion passes by a vote of 8-1. Is there a motion to adopt the written findings and decision that have been reviewed by all board members who participated in the case?
This is Paula Wolff, so moved.
Michael Eady, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Regarding case number 20 PB 2970, the superintendent filed charges against police officer George Stacker, recommending that he be discharged from the Chicago Police Department for giving false testimony and obstructing an investigation. The superintendent subsequently moved to withdraw these charges because Stacker resigned his position with the police department. Is there a motion to grant the superintendent's motion?
This is Paula Wolff, so moved.
Michael Eady, second.
I will now call on the board members for their votes. Wolff? Crow?
Aye.
Eady?
Aye.
Flores?
Aye.
Montes?
Aye.
O'Malley?
Aye.
Sweeney?
Aye.
Zop?
Aye.
And I vote in favor of the motion. Voting in favor are board members Wolff, Crow, Eady, Flores, Montes, O'Malley, Sweeney, Zop, and myself. The motion passes by a vote of 9-0. The decisions in the cases on which the board took final action this evening will be entered as of today's date and will be issued to the parties. The decisions will then be posted on the board's website. There are 3 additional disciplinary matters. Board members Zopp, Montes, and Sweeney will make these announcements. Board member.
Does that mean go first? Do you want me to go first? All right. Okay. Pursuant to section 2-78-130 of the Municipal Code of Chicago, I considered request for review 20-05 in which the Chief Administrator of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability and the Superintendent of Police did not agree regarding the discipline of a police officer. Chief Administrator Roberts recommended that Police Officer John Cantazara Jr. be discharged from the Chicago Police Department for posting statements on Facebook in violation of the rules of conduct. Superintendent Brown disagreed with certain findings and recommended that Officer Cantazara be suspended for 1 year. After considering this matter, it is my opinion that the superintendent did not meet the burden of overcoming the Chief Administrator's recommendation for discipline. Based on the facts and circumstances of this matter, an evidentiary hearing before the police board is necessary to determine whether Officer Cantazara violated any of the police department's rules of conduct. A copy of the written decision will be posted on the board's website as required by the municipal code.
Thank you. Board member Montes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I considered request for review 20-06 in which the Chief Administrator of the Civilian Office of the Police Accountability and the Superintendent of Police did not agree regarding the discipline of a police officer. Chief Administrator Roberts recommended that Police Regional Officer Reginald Murray be discharged from the Chicago Police Department for committing domestic battery and making false statements. Superintendent Brown disagreed with the sustained findings for these allegations. After considering this matter, it is my opinion that the superintendent did not meet the burden of overcoming the Chief Administrator's recommendation for discipline. Based on the facts and circumstances of this matter, an evidentiary hearing before the police board is necessary to determine whether Officer Murray violated any of the police department's rules of conduct. A copy of the written decision will be posted on the board's website as required by the municipal code. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I considered request for a review 20-07 in which the Chief Administrator of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability and the Superintendent of Police did not agree regarding the discipline of a police officer. Chief Administrator Roberts recommended that Police Officer Nicosia Matthews be discharged from the Chicago Police Department for making threats, wearing her uniform while off duty, and for making false statements. Superintendent Brown disagreed with certain findings and recommended that Officer Matthews be suspended for 5 days. After considering this matter, it is my opinion that the superintendent did not meet the burden of overcoming the Chief Administrator's recommendation for discipline. Based on the facts and circumstances of this matter, an evidentiary hearing before the police board is necessary to determine whether Officer Matthews violated any of the police department's rules of conduct. A copy of the written decision will be posted on the board's website as required by the municipal code.
Thank you very much. As we move to the public comment section of the meeting, I want to remind everyone of the board's policy on participation at these meetings. We value your comments and questions on police-related matters, and we will treat you with courtesy and respect. We expect all members of the public to treat everyone at this meeting in a similar manner. Please note that personal attacks and obscene language are strictly prohibited, and that repeated violations of the board's policy may result in the violator not being permitted to participate in future board meetings. I will now call upon members of the public who signed up in advance to speak. Each speaker will be unmuted after I call his or her name. Now you have to bear with me for 1 second. The first speaker is Alina. Alina G. If you can unmute yourself, Max, is there something they have to press? I don't remember.
They may need to press *6 to unmute themselves.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Elena Gormley. I am a resident of the 49th Ward in Rogers Park, and I am an MSW student at the University of Illinois at Chicago, Jane Addams College of Social Work. And I'm commenting tonight just because I am so completely horrified at the experience of Anjanette Young, who's also a graduate of UIC Jane Addams, who is a social worker who has devoted her career to providing mentoring opportunities to other Black social workers, which is so needed in the field. And the terror that she experienced, and just even just myself observing these videos, is completely unconscionable. CPD had every opportunity to follow up to verify that the information that they received was accurate, and they failed to do so. And just like, in my opinion, smashing down someone's door and handcuffing someone who's naked is never acceptable, regardless if they had gotten to the air quotes right home, because everyone is entitled to constitutional due process. We have these fundamental protections written into our Constitution, not just to protect outstanding citizens, but to protect the people that the state and that a lot of the public frequently deem undeserving of fundamental rights. These are fundamental rights. You don't get them just by being a good person. You get them because you are a person. And this is really personal to me because social work has had its own extraordinarily shameful history of causing harm to marginalized groups. If I ever became aware of a social work colleague who was strained a naked person, I would frankly move heaven and earth and would risk my professional career to ensure that they were held accountable for their actions and would work to repair the harm they caused. I fully expect real accountability and concrete changes in policy to ensure that what happened to Anjanette Young never happens to anyone else in Chicago. It has to be more than just the words that Superintendent Brown has said tonight at this meeting. I have an ethical mandate to end all forms of oppression, and I take that really seriously, and I'm just so disappointed that CPD continues to fail to meet basic benchmarks of the consent decree, and that so many of the officers hold such open contempt for the citizens that they are sworn to protect and serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Nicole Johnson. If you can press *6.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening, everybody.
Good
Can
evening.
you hear me?
Good evening.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, President Foreman and Vice President Wolff and the remaining board members. My name is Nicole Janine Johnson. I am a proud Inglewood resident where I grew up. I am a very active, concerned, and committed public servant. And tonight I'm speaking up for Black women. On Monday, November 14th, 1842, the first slave auction in Chicago was held on the southeast corner of LaSalle and Randolph Streets, right where City Hall stands today. On February 21st, 2019, just a few days shy of a new administration or the turning over of new administration here in the city of Chicago, police officers raided the home of my fellow sister in Christ, Anjanette Young. 9 white officers bombarded her bedroom, handcuffed her as she stood there in horror, naked and alone. It wasn't until much time passed until she was given a blanket to cover her body, but that was ineffective to cover her, as her hands were handcuffed. These images are quite triggering and reminiscent of enslaved Black women standing on the auction block, similar to what happened on November 14th, 1842. My message is simple. When the board is tasked to administer disciplinary actions against the officers that not only ordered the raid, but those that conducted it, I ask that you bear this image in your head. Be mindful that the experiences that Black Chicagoans and Black people across the entire diaspora experience with police date back to slavery. As we are now 401 years since the first slaves came to this country, it will behoove us to move swiftly on this and ensure that justice is served. If the uprisings of June 2020 taught us anything, justice and retribution must be served to Black people or we will all perish. Some may say this happened in the previous administration, but the call to justice, whether the harm has been done now or later, they're responsible now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Linda Hudson. You can press *6 to unmute.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Linda Hudson, and I live in the 8th Ward. In October, I attended a coffee with the commander event at a McDonald's restaurant with Commander Rubio. I told Commander Rubio about illegal activity on my block that included high-end cars, and I later found out guns and drugs were involved. Commander Rubio gave me his email address and asked that I forward all information to him, which I did. I also included license plate numbers and a picture of the suspect. Never heard anything else from Commander Rubio. On November 5th, at around 1:45 p.m., I witnessed a drug deal from these same neighbors, and I called 911. I gave the dispatcher a description of the van, including the license plate number and the description of the people involved. The suspects completed their transaction at 2:40. Mind you, I called at 1:45. I waited by my window another 15 minutes to make sure that it was exactly 1 hour from the time that I called, and no one from the 4th District showed up. We're constantly being bombarded with the message of, if you see something, say something. I saw something, I said something, and no one showed up. What do you do when you see something and no one shows up?
Thank you. Superintendent?
Yes, I have the Chief of Patrol over all of the district, Brian McDermott, on this police board meeting. And he just heard that. And Brian, let's get a follow-up. And Mr. President, if we can get the contact information of the recent speakers so we can get Rubio and the Chief of Patrol, Brian McDermott, to respond and get an answer to why we didn't do what she asked and what we can do to correct that problem there in her community. We would appreciate it.
Yes. Yes, sir. Ms. Hudson, is it okay if I ask Max Caproni to pass the information to CPD?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Celia Colon. If you can press *6 to unmute. Celia Colon. I'll come back and see just to ensure. Next speaker, Jennifer Edwards.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hope everybody is okay this evening. I emailed prior to the meeting our narrative, so I'll be brief. We thank you for attending the numerous crime issues in our districts. We are organizing residents in the 6th, 20th, 7th, 8th, and 9th wards. In organizing our neighbors, we're getting them into the habit of reporting crimes and, if not possible, to communicate the situation with us. In organizing, we connected with the commanders and CAP staff of the 3rd, 6th, 7th, and 4th districts. We understand that the commanders of the 3rd and 6th and 7th districts have changed recently, and we hope that the superintendent will connect us with the new command staff so we may continue to collaborate. We also appreciate working with Commander Navalis, and he in turn connecting us with Chief McDermott. We will continue our collaboration with them and the Cook County Sheriff Initiative. We've asked community members to give descriptions of problem areas, most having to do with drug activity in the 3rd and the 6th district. I'll briefly just read off some of the addresses. You guys can contact me with a little bit more about the narrative. 3rd District, 7330 South St. Lawrence, 702 East 72nd Street, 72nd Street between St. Lawrence and Champlain and the mouth of the alley, 73rd block of Champlain, 72nd Street, 7217 St. Lawrence, 75th and Cottage Grove, St. Lawrence, Langley. These are all drug sales. 75th, 72nd to 75th in Eberhard, especially 74th in Eberhard, and I have the times listed in our narrative. That's the 3rd District. 6th District, 7701 South State Street at the car wash, the mobile station at 7601 South State, the BP station at 7559 South State Street, a carjacking,
Ms.
the baking
Edwards,
lot at 7.
Ms. Edwards, if I can ask, if you can give me the all the specifics, I can pass it along. We're at time now, but I'll be sure to pass
Okay.
the specifics along.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your continued participation. Next speaker,
Okay.
Helena Haley. Next speaker, Lori Burns. If you can press
Good
star
evening.
6. Good evening.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you for addressing our concerns. CAPS is the only police-resident interface that I know of, but we're struggling to make this connection effective in the 6th District. For example, between Friday, December 11th and Tuesday, December 15th, 4 different phone calls were made to our CAPS office in order to gather information about a home invasion murder that occurred on the next block, the 500 block of East 89th Street. Twice, no one answered, and the voicemail was full. Third call, the officer would not say who the detective is, but said that I would get a call back with whatever information could be shared. The 4th call, the officer took a handwritten message for our CAPS liaison officer, and then I later learned that he was on vacation. So I don't expect to get a call back from anybody. And I'm sorry, my neighbor was murdered at home, and we think that that's a big deal. We're not used to having just murdered people on our block every day. Unfortunately, this is one example of many. In response to the surge in violent crime and carjackings, just last week, Deputy Chief Blomness told that our residents, CPD will catch these offenders from community tips. Well, I regularly endure our beat meetings and am just learning to just keep trying. But what about those residents who can't or don't or won't because they shouldn't have to just keep trying? So specifically, how are people in the CAPS offices trained and evaluated? If people in the CAPS office don't have the technical or soft skills that they need, what is the fix? There are residents who are ready, willing, and able, and capable of helping. How can we help CAPS be better? As tax-paying, law-abiding residents, we deserve better. So this is a complaint, it's an offer to help, and it's a request for specific solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Eunice Chapman Regis. You can press
Hello.
star 6.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good evening. I'm continuing on my report I wasn't able to finish last month. I'm sorry, I'm an active member of the 79th and Eberhard Block Club, and my complaint still involves Family Market Fresh Meat Market, 457 East 79th Street, 519 East 79th Street. I'm grateful that you guys reached out to me, somebody from the Superintendent Brown's office and 6th District CAPS office, but CAPS office just reached out to me recently before this meeting. And I'm still concerned because we're still calling 911 and getting SRA numbers from 311 regarding people congregating at 457 on that corner wearing black and red. We're concerned about that. We've had roll call by the Sheriff Department 2 years ago. Is that going to happen again? When the 6th Ward would complain to the Alderman Sawyer, it does no good. The owner of the store, of the renter of the store, 457, says he's never going to leave. I mean, why does he say that? There's currently loitering in front of the store, filtered down the block, alongside the store, even in inclement weather with loud profanity and boisterous activity. Their drug activities and gang activities seem to be the reason why they refuse to leave. And we've had unprecedented home invasions that have never occurred before. I thank you for listening to me, but it's concerning that Commander Muhammad only been here 2 years. He's gone already. We never have a regular person, a police officer that are in our district because it's considered a training district. How can we establish a relationship with the public and build our camaraderie if they keep changing? And this is a heavy crime, and now we've got spiraling carjacking in our area. I thank you for your time. Have a blessed evening and holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Gail Salisbury.
Hello, and thank you very much. I appreciate this. This is Gail Salisbury. I reside in the 6th District, Beat 624. For decades, I have lived at 7917 South Evans and am having a problem, and I truly need your assistance. Happy Liquors has contributed to the public intoxication occurring at 79th and Cottage Grove. The patrons of Happy Liquors sit at the T of the alley at 79th Street on the west side of Cottage Grove, sharing the alley with Evans Avenue. Not only do the patrons practice public intoxication daily, but public urination is also practiced in the alley and also behind 7915 and my address 7917 South Evans. It's frequent that when I go out to go into the garage that I have to wait for people to be in front of my garage with public urination. Sitting in my backyard to enjoy peace of quiet is rare, as the patrons from Happy Liquors speak loudly and disrupt my peace in the area. Calling 911 to complain is a daily occurrence. Sometimes I see the police respond to calls, however, many calls do not, they go unrepresented. The security cameras that I have on my garage has not deterred this activity. I am at wit's end, and at one point I was steadfast and said I would endure to turn around the area and change the poor quality of life. And now I feel it's a losing battle and should move to experience a better quality of life that is promised to Chicagoans. Suggestions to rectify the problem is 1, to vote the street from 79th Street from King Drive to Greenwood dry of alcoholic beverages, and B is to remove the wooden fence surrounding the Gift of Life parking lot to allow visibility between Cottage Grove and Evans at 79th Street. In addition to that, police are often non-responsive to calls for cars parked at the fire hydrant at 7930 South Evans, as we do have residential zone parking 789. And when I call, I don't get, oftentimes the police don't come to write tickets as well. So at this point, I'd like to know what I should.
Out of time, but if you can, if any other points, if you can get them to Max or to me, I can make sure that I can relay that over to CPD.
Thank you. Those are my only points. I just want to know what I should do at this point.
Okay, Superintendent.
Yes, I appreciate you making us aware. My office and the Chief of Patrol is on this meeting Zoom, and we'll get you a response. And I've been emailing while these calls have been going on this is not acceptable, and this has to improve. Our community response and these concerns need to improve immediately. So thank you for making me aware. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. June Norfleet. Ms. Norfleet, if you could press *6. Ms. Norfleet. Right, next speaker, Matt Brandon.
Hello.
Oh, Ms. Norfleet, wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Greetings to all of my Chicago neighbors and sincere best wishes that the heart of the season will abide gently with you and your loved ones. I can tell you without a doubt, this has been an unprecedented year of civic education. And in my year of presenting to the board, I have seen the public participation grow. That is good, and I joyously commend my neighbors in voicing their concern. This evening, Superintendent, I'm sure you're getting an earful. Even those whose perspective I may differ with, I have learned so much. And as we settle in to watch that seasonal favorite, The Wizard of Oz, let me reflect that this year has shown that we are the voice and the power behind the curtain. Therefore, Superintendent, with our voice, we are telling you about our challenges. We are asking that you use our resources, that is the CPD, for a response to these crimes. Our request is strong and it is firm. Continuous criminal activity in the areas that have been identified is unacceptable and must be halted. Superintendent, we have presented you with a litany of trouble spots, hot spots. We need you to require the local districts to address these concerns and these crimes, and we further ask that a full report of the specific request for each of these hotspots of criminal activity is provided for us at the next police board meeting and in the interim to local citizens in the affected area. On another issue, Superintendent, we encourage you and the CPD staff to continue with all due diligence in developing and uncover all material to support the charges brought forth by Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox against the perpetrators in the homicide of our valued slain firefighter, Lieutenant Dwayne Williams. We believe that the excellent work that CPD can do will support the state's attorney's charges and even upgrade them to charges to adult status. And we here and now support such an upgrade. Additionally, we ask that any accomplice are similarly identified and appropriately charged. No slip-ups this time, okay, guys and ladies? May we all transition into joy and peace in the near future, and I leave you in community affinity. My name is June Northley. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Northley. Next speaker, Matt Brandon.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to ask everybody on this call not to paint the entire Chicago Police Department with one brush. Every profession has its problems, and it's up to the leaders to fix it, and we are asking that they do. President Foreman, we, the communities organized to win, want to first thank the men and women of the Chicago Police Department for their continued dedication to duty during this deadly pandemic. You remain in the thoughts and prayers of many in our communities. Stay safe. Kyle has had the opportunity to meet via Zoom and speak with Commander Angel Navalis of the CAPS program. Commander Navalis took 90 minutes from his busy schedule to address questions and recommendations that were presented to him for his review prior to our meeting. Superintendent Brown is to be congratulated on the selection of Commander Navalis to lead the CAPS program. We look forward to working with the commander and trust in his commitment to building the bridge between the police department and the community. We will continue to meet monthly and introduce community leaders in our network to Commander Navalis. Congratulations to the new commanders of the 3rd, 6th, and 7th district. Kyle works with many community members and groups in these districts and looks forward to meeting and working with these new leaders. Congratulations to former Commanders Snelling and Muhammad on their promotions. They will be missed. Kyle is continuing to enlist members of the various community partners we partner with in preparation to the implementation of the Superintendent's Neighborhood Policing Initiative. Kyle also works closely with the Cook County Sheriff's Unit assigned here on the South Side in support of CPD. As this is the season of giving, Kyle commits to giving our full support to the efforts of law enforcement that follows policy, procedure, and general orders, and engages with the communities they serve. We wish all of you and your families a happy and safe holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Robert Moore. Robert Moore.
Mr. Foreman, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hold on, let me get off this other phone, I guess. I can only go with one, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold on, just say this train. All right, real quick here. Mr. Superintendent, my understanding of your Can you hear me, Mr. Foreman?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I want to make sure this phone's still on, right? Mr. Superintendent, I need to know your email address is dnb@chicagopolice.org, correct?
No,
Hello?
no, that is not. No, it's not DMB. I'll have that sent to you through the board.
Okay, thank you. Next issue is this. I got to get moving. I'm complaining that 5G is being installed in Chicago that constitutes reckless endangerment. Research has got to be conducted. Investigations got to be conducted as 5G. Okay, it's the whole thing is part of a weaponization to the population reduction without having to worry about backfire from sabotage from the inside of the policing entities and the military. I'm getting remote control commandeering of electronic devices on all different devices continually in different situations. I need to get a police report made of that. I need investigation. Also, there's a wrongful death / murder / attempted murder fund for myself and all people who fit the same profile that's been established at the Institute of St. Michael the Archangel on the website. I provided that information, the URL before, and then there's a separate one which my brother put up for myself. So I need to get protocols if my body should be found or bodies of other patriots are found so that we can get legitimate investigations and make sure that, because patriots are getting knocked off and are going to be getting knocked off coming up here, what's coming with Trump evidently, naturalnews.com, Mike Adams, and also Robert David Steele are talking about this election was definitely stolen. And it might come down to Trump having to use the Insurrection Act and use the military on the streets of at least the 5 states. And then it'll probably go nationwide then. And that's going to be a real huge problem. We're in an ambush. The country's in an ambush. And we need to get legitimate investigation in the Chicago Police Department of the rioting, the looting, the mayhem of the last 7 months, that it reaches not just to what's called the deep state, but to the super cloud cover global plantation owners.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. At this time, all of the members of the public who signed up in advance to speak have been called upon. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just wanted to publicly state thank you to...
No, you didn't. Everybody has not been called on. I called Tuesday, Ghian, and put my name on this list. Now, all of a sudden, the Queen is not on the list, Ghian. What kind of games are y'all?
Queen sister, if you would stop for a second, perhaps it's an oversight. We're in the time of Zoom. Maybe it passed us. I will call on you. Queen sister, if you would like to speak, you can please unmute. Queen sister. Queen sister.
Press *6 to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, ho, everybody. I like to pay homage to Titus Moore, officer of the CPD, that it will be well missed in these streets. He was a genuine officer, and I think that has gone overlooked. Allow me to say that we, the women and mothers and legal citizens of the city of Chicago, have some genuine concerns regarding your determining factors and formulas as it applies to the reward eligibility for innocent juvenile victims of gun violence. We are asking that a real-time reward availability fund or account be established, Ghian, to recognize one's efforts and achievements as it applies to providing information to you all as these bodies are dropping in this street. There should be a reward for juveniles under the age of 13. You know, we don't understand your eeny, meeny, miny, mo factors in determining who is eligible for rewards and who is not. It needs to be clarified if you are seriously considering catching these assailants that are eliminating
these young black bodies from the city. Now, we've truly asking that you honor this real-time reward availability with expeditious authority as a collaboration effort and a genuine expression of good faith towards crime reduction and the preservation of young life here in this city of Chicago. Now, let me also say towards Jeanette Young, you all have created a modern-day Sarah Bartman, a Hottentot Venus. And at some point, I'm sorry is insufficient. And I'm sorry is just not enough, Ghian. That's all I'm going to say here. Superintendent Brown, you need to call me. One love, one village.
Thank you, Queen Sister. Celia Colon.
Ghian,
Yes, ma'am.
this is Krista. I was on the list along with one of the Good Kids Mad City, Alicia. So I'm not sure why you guys don't have, but I'm gonna let you go on and see.
For the record, this is Krista Noel. Ms. Noel?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go on. You call Celia. You can come back to me.
Okay. Celia Colon. Ms. Colon, if you could press *6. Ms. Colon. All right, Krista, if Ms. Noel, if you would like to speak now, we'll try to see if we can work out the technical difficulties with Ms. Colon.
Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Well, I am beyond PO'd when it comes to what happened to Jeanette. And I would guess that you all would expect me to have felt this way. There are no words to describe. I think the shock that every Black woman experienced when she found out that this had happened to a Black woman. Now, this is an educated Black woman, but I don't care if she's educated or not, because it shouldn't have happened. I expect the movement on this case and this investigation to be swift. I don't think it needed, or it shouldn't have, it should be still in investigative mode. There should have been a decision on this. And those cops that allowed a woman, a Black woman, like the baby said, it goes back. It goes way back. We cannot allow for this anymore. We cannot allow you to dehumanize us like this. She's a human being, always has been, always will be. African people in America and across the world are human beings, and we need to start being treated like we're human beings. Now, if I have to tell you 43 times you in the wrong place, there's something wrong with you. But you know what it reflects? It reflects how police officers, cops, don't respect us when we open our mouths and tell you wrong.
Thank you.
Why do we have to continue down this path?
Ms. Noel, thank
Start treating us the way we need to be treated. We need to be treated like human beings.
Ms. Noel, thank you. Your time is up. You also indicated that there was someone else who's on the line who signed up. I don't have a name for the person. Do you have a name? Ms.
Yeah.
Noel?
Yes, Alicia from Good Kids Mad City should be on the line. And I'm not sure if Celia can get on, but yeah, Alicia from Good Kids Mad City.
Alicia, if you're on, if you can press *6. Alicia? Celia? Not hearing them, I'm going to move on. So I was saying that I wanted to thank all of the members of the public who have routinely and continuously participated in this police board process. It's an important process.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me now? This
Yes.
is Celia Colon.
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. It kept saying that it wouldn't allow me to unmute. Can I speak now, or are you going to somebody else?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Give me 1 second. Let me just, So when I say defund the police, that means invest in communities. Trauma that we've been experiencing. We cannot continue to fight violence with more violence.
Miss Cologne, we're losing you.
Not hunting us, not harming us, and not killing us. When it comes to the Latinx community, we're not even thought of. We're not even engaged at all by the CPD. No outreach is ever done, especially when it came to being a part of the use of force workforce group. There was never any outreach at all done to the Latinx community that does not speak English. And that was pure, a slap in the face, structural violence against the Latinx community. The fact that the racist structural violence against Black and brown women continue in this community and go undisregarded about our lives needs to stop. There needs to be more investment in the communities to stop all the violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I was saying thank you very much to the members of the public who participate. Your voice is very important. The feedback does not go unheard. You know, we ensure that CPD reports back to us based on the feedback that we hear, and to CPD and to Superintendent. Superintendent Brown, this is plan for the year, your new job to start like this. But we're grateful for you and the work that you've been putting in and the changes that you've been making. Same thing, Chief Roberts, the work that your team has been putting in. We're grateful, and the police board, we're grateful, and OIG, Deborah, your team. And so we're looking really to 2021 to continue this process of what we've been doing. It's not our normal process. Zoom is our new normal. But together, we continue to work like this. We'll continue to make changes, and the changes are not going to be easy and they're not going to be quick. But when we continue to work together like this as one Chicago, I think that we ultimately will start to see some of the changes that we all want to see. So with that said, let me go to my, at this point, I'm going to ask, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move, and I also second your last comments. Paula.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 The motion passes and the meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays to everyone, and please, everyone, stay safe. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good
night.